My daughter's hair used to be her favorite thing about herself. I know that sounds like a small thing, but when you're 7 years old and you've spent 2 years growing out your curls past your shoulders, it's not small at all. Every morning, Ivy would stand in front of the bathroom mirror and ask me to braid it differently. French braid Tuesday, 2 pigtails Wednesday, a high ponytail with a little butterfly clip on Thursday. She had a whole system. She took it seriously in the way only little kids can take something seriously, completely without embarrassment. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand what was taken from her. Not just the hair, the ritual, the joy of it, the way she'd tilt her head and say, "Mom, does it look pretty?" And it always did. Last 4th of July, my in-laws hosted their annual backyard cookout. Every year, same thing. My mother-in-law sets up the folding tables. My father-in-law burns the hot dogs on purpose because he thinks it makes them taste better, and the whole extended family shows up with their covered dishes and their lawn chairs and their opinions about everything. I'd been married to my husband Kevin for 6 years by then. His family is large and loud and mostly harmless. Mostly. His younger sister Renee had always been a different story. Renee is 31, 2 years younger than me, and she has spent the better part of a decade making it quietly clear that she doesn't think I deserved Kevin. Not in an obvious way. She never said anything outright. It was always smaller than that. Comments about my cooking that landed just slightly wrong. Compliments on Ivy that somehow circled back to things Renee had done as a child. The way she'd pull Kevin into a separate conversation whenever I walked into a room, like there was always something being said that I wasn't supposed to hear. Kevin saw it sometimes. He'd squeeze my hand under the dinner table when she did something particularly pointed. But he also loved her. She was his little sister, and I understood that, I really did. So I kept my mouth shut, and I smiled, and I passed the potato salad, and I told myself it wasn't worth the fight. That was my mistake. I kept telling myself it wasn't worth the fight. Because the thing about people like Renee is that if you never push back, they start to believe there are no limits. The cookout started fine. Ivy ran straight to Kevin's cousin's kids the second we arrived, and within 5 minutes they were all in the backyard with sidewalk chalk. Kevin cracked open a beer and got pulled into a conversation about the game. I helped his mum carry things out from the kitchen and we talked about nothing in particular, her garden, a movie she'd seen, whether the neighborhood association was going to approve the new fence her neighbor wanted. Renee showed up about an hour in. She hugged Kevin first, then their parents, then nodded at me like I was someone she vaguely recognized from somewhere. I nodded back. We'd done this dance enough times that it didn't sting anymore. Or I told myself it didn't. What I noticed and filed away was the way she watched Ivy. Ivy had come in from the yard flushed and happy, her curls loosening from the braid I'd done that morning. She had chalk dust on her knees and a popsicle melting down her wrist. She looked the way kids are supposed to look on a summer afternoon. Renee watched her cross the yard and something passed across her face that I didn't have a name for yet. I almost said something. I almost walked over and stood between them for no reason I could have explained out loud. I didn't. I told myself I was being paranoid. About 2 hours into the party, I was helping Kevin's mom in the kitchen, refilling the chip bowls, cutting the watermelon, when I realized I hadn't seen Ivy in a while. That's not unusual at a family party. Kids disappear into corners and come back sticky, but something made me put the knife down and go look. She wasn't in the backyard. She wasn't in the living room. I checked the downstairs bathroom. Empty. I went upstairs. The door to the guest bathroom was closed. I could hear voices inside. Renee's voice and a couple of the older kids and Ivy's voice smaller than the others. And then I heard something electric. A buzzing sound I recognized immediately because Kevin uses one to trim his hair every few weeks. I didn't knock. I opened that door and what I saw. I have replayed it so many times that it doesn't feel real anymore. It feels like something I watched happen to someone else. Renee was holding a set of clippers. Ivy was sitting on the edge of the tub. More than half of her hair was already on the floor. Renee's teenage daughter was standing by the door holding Ivy's shoulders. Another kid I didn't even know was recording on a phone. Ivy looked up at me and her face crumpled. She hadn't been crying until she saw me. I think she'd been holding it together because she didn't fully understand yet what was happening. And then she saw my face, and she understood. Renee lowered the clippers. She smiled. Not a guilty smile. A smile like she'd been waiting for me to walk in. "We're just playing salon," she said. Ivy wanted a makeover. Ivy was shaking her head. Small, quick shakes. No, I didn't. I stepped into the bathroom. I took the clippers out of Renee's hand. I looked at what was left of my daughter's hair. Uneven, patchy, the curls I'd spent 2 years growing gone. And I said, very quietly, "Get out of this room." Renee actually laughed. "It's hair. It grows back. Don't make a scene." I said, "Get out." She went, still smiling. I sat on the edge of the tub and I pulled Ivy into my lap and I held her while she cried. I looked at the phone on the floor. The kid recording had dropped it and followed Renee out. I picked it up. The video was still running. I stopped it. I looked at what had been recorded and I made a decision. I didn't delete it. I sent it to myself. Then I went downstairs. Kevin was still in the backyard. I brought him inside and I showed him the video before I said a single word. I watched his face change. I've seen Kevin angry maybe 4 times in 6 years of marriage. This was something past anger. This was something that had no expression for it. He went to find Renee. I went to find my mother-in-law. She was in the kitchen with 2 of Kevin's aunts. And when I started to tell her what had happened, I saw something shift in her face before I even finished. It was the shift of someone who has already decided which side they're on. Renee would never do something to hurt Ivy on purpose, she said. She shaved my daughter's head. Kids do silly things at parties. Renee probably got carried away. You don't need to. She used clippers. In the upstairs bathroom, while your granddaughter cried, there was a silence. One of the aunts looked at the floor. My mother-in-law said, "I think you should calm down before you say something you regret." I looked at her for a long moment. I thought about 6 years of swallowed comments. 6 years of being the person who kept the peace. 6 years of telling myself it wasn't worth the fight. "I'm very calm," I said. "I'm leaving now, and I'm calling the police." She said something behind me as I walked away. I heard the words overreacting and always so dramatic. I kept walking. Kevin met me at the front door. His eyes were red. Renee had laughed at him too, apparently, told him to relax, that I was the problem, that I'd always been too sensitive, that I needed to stop letting Ivy be a crybaby. He'd told her she needed to leave. She'd said she'd leave when she wanted to leave. Their mum had taken Renee's side. We drove to the police station with Ivy in the back seat, still in her 4th of July dress, with half a head of uneven hair and chalk dust, still on her knees. The officer we spoke to was a woman. She watched the video. She made a note. She told us that what Renee had done could potentially be filed as simple assault, an unlawful use of a restraint. Renee's daughter had held Ivy's shoulders, but that charges in cases like this were at the discretion of the district attorney and depended on several factors. She was honest with us. She said criminal charges would be difficult to guarantee, but she filed the report. She documented everything. She noted the video as evidence. She also said, quietly, before we left, "You should also consult a civil attorney." We did, that same week. The next 3 days were some of the hardest I've had in a long time, not because of what happened to Ivy, though that was its own kind of grief to move through, but because of everything that happened around it. Renee texted Kevin no fewer than 15 times. I wasn't going to look at them, but Kevin showed me because he said I should know what we were dealing with. They started out dismissive. "Tell your wife to drop it." It was a haircut. Then they shifted. "Mom's really upset. You're tearing this family apart." Then they became something else entirely. "If she goes forward with this, I will make sure everyone knows what kind of person she really is." That last one, Kevin forwarded to our attorney. My mother-in-law called Kevin twice. He answered the first time. She told him that I had ruined the holiday, that Renee was devastated, that the family was talking and everyone felt I had overreacted. He told her that her granddaughter had been held down and had her hair cut off with clippers while someone recorded it, and he asked her very directly, "Whose side are you on?" She said, "I don't want to have to choose sides." He told her she'd already made her choice. He hung up. He didn't answer the second call. I won't pretend that was easy for him. Kevin loves his family. He's not the kind of person who cuts people off easily. I watched him sit with that for days, quiet in a way he doesn't usually get. I didn't push him. I just made sure he knew I saw it. What Renee did next was the part I should have anticipated but didn't. She posted about it. Online, she posted a version of events in which she had given her niece a fun summer haircut, and I had screamed and attacked her and was now dragging the family through legal hell over a harmless prank. She didn't post the video. She couldn't, because I had it. But she posted enough that people in the family started reaching out with opinions. Kevin's aunt sent me a message that said, "I'm sure she didn't mean any harm." A cousin I'd always liked sent Kevin a message asking him to please talk some sense into your wife. My mother-in-law posted a comment on Renee's post that said, simply, "We love you, sweetheart. This will pass." And then something happened that I hadn't expected. Kevin's cousin, a woman named appropriately Justine, who I'd always liked but hadn't known well, shared Renee's post and added her own comment. She wrote, "I was there. I saw Ivy's face when she came downstairs. I don't know what version of this Renee is telling, but what I saw was a little girl who had been frightened and humiliated, and the adults in that room who look the other way should be ashamed." The comments that followed were not what Renee had planned for. People who had been quiet started speaking up. Someone who'd been at the party said they'd seen Renee take Ivy upstairs and had thought it was odd. Another person said they had a daughter Ivy's age and couldn't imagine. By the end of the day, Renee had deleted the post. She texted Kevin one more time after that. It just said, "This is your wife's fault." He didn't respond. Our attorney filed a civil lawsuit 6 weeks after the 4th of July. We were suing for damages, emotional distress, the cost of Ivy's therapy, which we had started immediately, and what our attorney called intentional infliction of emotional distress on a minor. Renee hired her own attorney. My mother-in-law, I later found out, helped pay for it. The discovery process turned up a few things Renee probably wishes it hadn't. The recording on the phone, the one the kid had made, showed very clearly that Ivy had said, "Stop," at least twice. It showed Renee's daughter holding Ivy's arms. It showed Renee laughing. Our attorney also subpoenaed Renee's text messages from that week, which included a message she had sent to her daughter 2 days before the cookout that said, "If you see Ivy's hair, don't say anything. I have a surprise planned. Premeditated." She had planned this. That message changed everything. The mediation happened 4 months after the party. Renee's attorney pushed hard for a private settlement. I think they both understood by then that going to trial would be worse for Renee than anything a mediator would offer. We settled. I'm not going to share the number because our attorney advised against it, but I will say it was enough to cover 2 years of Ivy's therapy with a meaningful amount left over. Renee also signed an agreement that included a no-contact clause. She is not permitted to come within a certain distance of Ivy, and she is not permitted to contact me, Kevin, or Ivy directly or indirectly. Her attorney tried to get us to drop the no-contact provision. We didn't. There were no criminal charges filed in the end. The DA reviewed the case and determined the evidence didn't meet the threshold they needed for a criminal conviction. That part still makes me angry, if I'm honest. I think it should have. I think what Renee did, planned, deliberate, recorded, done to a 7-year-old, should have had criminal consequences. But the civil case gave us what the criminal system couldn't, and I've had to make my peace with that. Kevin's mother has not spoken to us since the mediation. I don't know if she ever will. Kevin has had one phone call with her since then, about something unrelated to any of this, and he said it was strained and short. I don't push him on it. That's his loss to carry, not mine. Ivy started seeing her therapist, a woman named Dr. Schaefer, about 3 weeks after the 4th of July. I want to tell you that it was fine, that kids are resilient, that she bounced back fast. That would be easier to write. But it wasn't that clean. For a while, she didn't want to go to school. She was convinced the other kids would make fun of her. She went through a phase where she didn't want to look in mirrors. She stopped asking me to braid her hair because there wasn't enough to braid. Some mornings she'd cry getting dressed. Not about anything specific, just a general sadness that settled on her that I couldn't lift no matter what I did. Dr. Schaefer was the one who suggested hats. Not to hide, but to give Ivy agency, to let her choose. Suddenly, Ivy had opinions about baseball caps and bucket hats, and the one with the sunflowers that she wore every single day for 3 weeks. It wasn't the same as her curls, but it was hers. The thing that actually turned a corner for her, and I still can't tell this part without my throat getting tight, was her best friend, a girl in her class named Wren. Wren came over one afternoon about a month after the party, and Ivy showed her the hats, and Wren was quiet for a minute, and then she said, "Can I come over tomorrow? I want to ask my mum something first." The next day, Wren came back with her haircut. A real, intentional cut. Not all the way, but short enough that it was clearly a choice. She'd asked her mum, and her mum had said yes, and she'd gone to the salon and she'd done it. Ivy stared at her. Wren said, "Now we match." Kind of. I had to leave the room. I stood in the hallway and I pressed my hand over my mouth, and I cried as quietly as I could. Because some things you can't plan for. Some things just happen because someone who loves your kid decides to love them out loud. Ivy's hair is coming back now. It's been almost a year. It's still shorter than it was, and the curl pattern has changed a little the way hair sometimes does when it grows back. But it's coming in thick, and she has opinions about it again. Last week, she asked me to look up pictures of different styles so she could decide what she wants to do when it gets long enough. I sat next to her on the couch with my phone and we scrolled through pictures for a long time, and she'd say, "Oh, that one," or "No, too much," and I let her take as long as she wanted. That's the thing about Renee's joke. She thought she was taking a haircut. She didn't understand, or she didn't care, that she was taking something much bigger than that. The ritual, the joy of it, the way a little girl gets to feel like herself. She didn't take it permanently, but she tried. And the fact that she tried, that she planned it, that she laughed, that's the part I'll carry the longest. I don't talk about Renee with Ivy. Dr. Schaefer says Ivy will have questions as she gets older and we'll answer them honestly and age appropriately when she does. For now, Ivy knows that what happened was wrong, that it wasn't her fault, and that we made sure there were consequences. She doesn't need to carry the rest of it. That's mine to carry. Kevin and I are okay. Better than okay, actually. There's something that happens when you go through something like this together. When you see the person you married choose your kid without hesitating. That changes the shape of your marriage in a good way. He chose us. Every single time there was a choice to make, he chose us. I won't forget that. And Renee, the last I heard, she's still in town, still posting on social media, still, apparently, the victim in every story she tells about herself. She sent Kevin one message, about 7 months after the mediation. It said, "I hope someday you'll forgive me, and we can be a family again." He read it. He sat with it for a while. And then he said to me, "She's still not apologizing." She said, "I hope you'll forgive me," not "I'm sorry." He's right. There's a difference. A real apology names what you did. It doesn't just ask the other person to do the emotional labor of forgiving without you having to say the words. He didn't respond. I don't know what the future looks like. I don't know if Kevin's mother ever comes back around, or if Renee ever says the actual words, or if any of this ever becomes something other than what it is. A woman who hurt a child on purpose and called it a joke, and a family that had to decide, one person at a time, what they were willing to stand next to. What I know is that my daughter asked me this morning if she could try a half-up style with the length she has now. I said yes. I got the brush. I got the little clips. I stood behind her at the bathroom mirror. She tilted her head and said, "Mom, does it look pretty?" I told her it looked beautiful. It did. I've thought a lot about what Renee believed would happen that day. I think she believed what a lot of people like her believe, that if you smile while you do something cruel, it doesn't count as cruelty. That if you frame destruction as a joke, you get to walk away from the damage. She had planned it 2 days in advance. She told her daughter not to say anything. She brought the clippers to a family party. And when I walked through that bathroom door and saw what she had done to my 7-year-old, she smiled at me. That's the part I keep coming back to. Not the panic, not the grief, not even the text messages afterward. The smile. Because the smile told me everything about what she'd expected, that I would absorb it, that I would be the one who felt embarrassed, that the family would close ranks and I would have no choice but to swallow it. She was wrong. And I think that's what genuinely shocked her. Not the lawsuit, not losing, the fact that I didn't disappear quietly. There's something I've come to understand about people who operate the way Renee does. They rely completely on the silence of the people they hurt. The whole architecture of that kind of cruelty is built on the assumption that you won't say anything, that you love the peace more than you love the truth, that the relationships around you, the mother-in-law, the cousins, the aunts with their opinions, matter more to you than what actually happened. And for a long time, I had been exactly the kind of person Renee was counting on. 6 years of kept peace, 6 years of swallowed words. I had trained her to expect my silence. What changed wasn't courage exactly. It was Ivy's face when she looked up at me from that bathtub. That was the moment I stopped calculating what the response would cost me and started being honest about what staying quiet would cost her. That's the thing about choices. They don't stay contained. Every time I chose to let something go, I wasn't just protecting the peace. I was teaching Renee where the line was. And every time she pushed and I didn't push back, the line moved. By the time we got to that bathroom, there was no line left. I'd erased it myself, one swallowed comment at a time. I don't think the settlement was justice in the fullest sense. I don't think Renee feels remorse. The message she sent Kevin 7 months later, with its careful non-apology, made that clear. What the settlement was consequence. And consequence isn't the same as justice, but it's real. It's something a child can understand when she's older. It's something that says, what was done to you was wrong, and it was treated as wrong, and you were worth fighting for. Ivy asked me once, a few months after everything, why her aunt did it. I told her the truth in the simplest way I could, that sometimes people hurt others because they're unhappy inside, and they think making someone else feel small will make them feel bigger. And it never works. It never actually fills the thing that's empty in them. It just leaves damage behind. She thought about that for a minute. Then she said, "That's kind of sad." It is. It genuinely is. But sad doesn't mean you have to absorb it. Sad doesn't mean you owe anyone your silence. Understanding why someone is broken doesn't mean you let them break your kid. Ren cut her hair to match Ivy's. She did that on her own because she wanted to, because she loved her friend enough to do something real. That's the other side of this. For every Renee, there's a Ren. For every person who will use your trust against you, there's someone who will show up and stand next to you in the most uncomplicated, generous way. The trick is learning to tell the difference before the bathroom door opens. I'm still learning that, but I'm learning it faster now.